everyone, welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET. Now, as promised, this is now our Meet Your Fund Manager segment. And today, we thought about talking about Motilal Oswal AMC's new funds. Now, Motilal Oswal is launching not one, not two, but 4 new funds, all of whose NFOs open today. And interestingly, they are all in the passive fund category, which means there's no active fund management, there's lesser cost, and it is going to be tracking certain indices. So to talk about that and what exactly is the investment theme, I have with me right here in the studios Mr. Pratik Oswal. He's the head of passive fund management at Motilal Oswal AMC. Pratik, thank you for joining us on ET Now, and 4 new funds all in the passive management category. So to start off with, there is the Nifty Mid Cap 150 Index, the Nifty Small Cap 250, Nifty 500, and there's also one that tracks the Nifty Bank.
That's right.
So to start with, if you could give us a rough description of what these funds will be like, what's going to be the investment theme, what does it aim to do for all our viewers and investors.
Right. Thank you, Mubina. So our objective at Motilal Oswal AMC is to actually simplify investing for the common investor. So before this, I actually spent over 6 to 8 months just traveling and meeting customers, distributors, wealth managers. And what I realized is that the average customer, this is 90% of the country doesn't really know what an alpha is, or what a beta is, what an outperformance is, what an index is. So for an average investor, he or she is just looking to outperform something called a fixed deposit. So if you can offer that at a very low cost, it makes a lot more sense. The idea behind doing 4 NFOs is actually all 4 products are very unique and they're first of its kind. The idea is to provide these products as building blocks so that advisors, wealth managers can use them as asset allocation tools. In terms of the products, so if you see most of India, the top 500 stocks is what most people trade, and we divide those 500 stocks into large cap, mid cap and small cap. So the top 100 stocks are large cap. The stock number 101 to 250 is mid cap, and stock number 251 to 500 is small cap. So we basically come up with 4 products. The mid cap 150 is basically stock number 101 to 150. The small cap is 250 to 500. We also have a Nifty Bank. So those who are looking to sort of bet on a sector. So banking has done phenomenally well over the last 10 to 15 years. So those who want to bet on that, we have a Nifty Bank fund, and also we have a Nifty 500, which I'm actually very excited about, because the Nifty 500 actually gets inspiration from the biggest mutual fund out there, Vanguard. So Vanguard launched the world's first index fund in 1976, and that was the S&P 500. And over time, that fund has actually become today one of the biggest and also the most popular funds. And this is over 45 years. So that fund started up as an all-market fund, but it's now become a large-cap fund only because of how the country's grown. So that's where the inspiration is from.
Okay, all right. So the basic aim, like you said, based on your conversation with a lot of investors and retail investors you met, is basically they just want a product that would be able to beat what they get in a simple fixed deposit.
Yes.
And you think that these funds would strive to at least do that? Of course, there's no guarantee or anything, but you believe that these funds would strive to work towards that? Absolutely.
So, this is obviously over a very long-term perspective, and the idea about going towards index funds is because we want to create instruments for long-term investing. So the index has obviously done phenomenally well over the last 15-20 years, and obviously, the idea is that a normal customer does not have the time to go out there and find a fund manager, find a good fund house and be able to stick to investments. One of the major causes to why people churn portfolios is because of underperformance. When you look at index funds, there's almost no underperformance. It comes at a very low fee. There's no risk of a fund manager changing or the fund closing down. And also they're very simple products to understand, So and especially, if someone is looking to invest for say 20, 30 years, it's very hard for him to pinpoint one particular fund manager. So I think, India is a very young country, so we're looking to invest say 20, 30 years for a time, and it makes sense for you to allocate in a small in an index fund, and once you invest in an index fund, you don't really have any reason to churn because you're not going to be doing poorly. at any point of time.
In fact, you answered my next question, because I was going to ask you that, there are so many actively managed mid and small cap funds, right? So why this passive fund? Anyway, so if I have to, if my viewers have to look at this fund, what is the ideal time frame they should have, and also return expectation from these funds?
Okay, so I think, I mentioned this before, these funds are built for long-term investors.
Yeah.
So someone who wants to play a very short-term game, and ETF might be a better instrument. But I think I'm very passionate about long-term investing and creating something that's a lot more customer-centric. So I think in terms of the ideal frame, I think most people in India would look at 3 to 5 year returns, which I think is not the wisest thing to do, because past performance, in my opinion, has not led to good future performance. So I think the beauty about index funds is that I have a 10 to 15 year track record. So I think, and if you assume that India is growing at the same rate as it has in the past, which I think I do, then you can expect the same level of performance that you've seen in index fund or in the benchmark over the last 10 to 15 years.
Okay, all right. Well, of course, the last 3-4 years have not been that great.
Which is why it's a great time to invest. So the worst time to launch a fund, in terms of the business opportunity, is in a bear market. So the reason why a small cap, mid cap is pretty interesting is because people can get in at valuations today that are very low.
True.
So I think, that's basically why we're also going and pushing the small and mid cap.
And this is a myth that a lot of investors have, that the markets are down, so now you should stop your SIPs or not invest in mutual funds. But hey, you're getting it at a cheaper price, right? At the same amount, you get to pick up more units. So I think this is a myth that really needs to be busted. But the fact is that, especially in the 250 to 500 category, and sometimes, in some cases, even in the 100 to 250 category, we have seen some of these IL&FS cases and DHFL cases that have crept in. So yes, there's always that room for error. But as a firm, what is your strategy in essentially weeding out the bad from the good?
Right. So the beauty about investing in an index is that you don't have to worry about this, because the index itself takes care about all the bad apples as well as the good apples. So the index rebalances every 3 to 6 months, and a company that does not do well, like a DHFL or like the ILFS, or even like the hundreds of companies that haven't done well, have been kicked out of the index, and the good ones have been promoted up. So this entire democratic process of how the index is managed is why index funds are obviously great. So 10 years ago, maybe the index was heavy on, say, infrastructure stocks. Today it's heavy on financial services. 10 years from now, it might be media. The beauty about an index fund is that it adapts to these changing conditions, which is why it's great, because you have a lot of fund managers who either buy too late or they sell too early, or whatever it is. There might be biases. By eliminating all this bias, you're basically getting something that adapts. And I think when you're looking at 20 or 30 year perspective, you can't expect the same India to happen in the next 40 years. India will change and grow in all sorts of ways. So you can expect your index to be the same.
Okay, all right. You mentioned, the one point that you mentioned at the beginning was with respect to costs. What essentially is a big advantage that passive funds have over active funds is that the cost reduces. But by how much? And also if I have to look at costs versus what I'm getting in return in an active fund, how does that essentially balance itself?
No, great question. So I think, Jack Bogle, who started Vanguard, he's today the biggest mutual fund. He's not there anymore, but what he said is that one of the biggest enemies for investors is expenses and emotions. And an index fund or an ETF or a passive product negates both. The reason why expenses are important is because most investors don't really realize that paying a 1% fee or a 2% fee or a 3% fee might not be important now, but over say 20 or 30 years time, that could be equivalent to 30 to 40% of your portfolio. I mean, just imagine taking out 1% every year for 30 years. That's 30% of your portfolio plus compounding interest. So I think cost over the long run are very important. And I think an index product, and even if you look at active investors, they have, for them to outperform the benchmark, they have to sort of outperform the index by a minimum of 3%. for them to at least match the benchmark.
Yeah.
And whatever's on top of that is what they create in the form of alpha.
Okay. So it's a tough business, undoubtedly. So finally, I mean, since your NFO is opening today, leave all our viewers with a message. Since you are, of course, the head of passive fund management, and
Yes.
you would like to share with all your prospective unit holders, what would you like to share with them?
I think what's important is, I think you touched upon a very important point about SIP. I think one of the biggest queries that I get from investors is, should I invest now? Should I invest 6 months from now? Is this the right time? And I personally believe that, and studies have shown that if you have a longer term horizon, say 7 to 10 years, then regardless of when you enter the market, 7 to 10 years of one cycle, it doesn't matter. So a guy who enters in the peak of the bull market versus a guy who enters at the bottomless point of the bear market will relatively get the same returns. So I think the SIP as a concept is extremely important for the investor. And I would say second also, I think it's important for investors to consider index funds because of how good they are in the long term. Because in the long run, you might not have, if you're investing for say 10-15 years, you might not have, it's very hard for you to identify fund managers and follow them and stick through. So that would be my 2 cents.
All right, Pratik, thanks so much then for taking time out and joining us to talk about your passive funds. Good luck for that. Folks, on that note, we are out of time in this edition of The Money Show. So thanks so much for watching. We'll be back with a brand new edition tomorrow, same time.